I get that Victorian stuff is a trend right now, but I don't know what I can do with this. Unless... Hello cousins! We'll be designing a wizard today. Think House Moving Castle with a more pronounced Victorian flair. It'll be a super long and rambly video where I go into depth into my character design process and do a lot of self-reviewing. I hope you enjoyed this video and it can accompany you in your own art or writing or whatever. Let's go! So we've got the first part of the concept, Victorian wizard, but I think we need another noun. I'm thinking someone that's morally grey or just kind of bad but also very entertaining. So what's a bad thing to do that isn't murder? Scamming, of course. So we've got Victorian wizard scammer. What do I mean when I'm saying a Victorian wizard scammer? Well, I'm imagining that he's basically a wizard without any actual completed education or qualification. Maybe he just does fake fortune telling or something like that. Let's jump into the designing phase first before I tell you about his character. Alright, so after collecting some references and doing some basic research into the Victorian era clothing, I jumped into the doodling phase and tried to unleash my creativity using textured brushes to mimic the freedom of fudging around with watercolors traditionally. I did a lot of minor world building so I could make sense of his design. Now, normal people in this world can do basic magic, but it's like how people can learn first aid but not everyone can become doctors. Wizards and witches are basically surgeons to the lay people's first aid in terms of magical skill. Now imagine if surgeons went around in their scrubs all day, every day, and also jazzed all of that stuff up with embroidery to truly flex their medical schooling and experience. That's how wizards work in this setting. In this world, I imagine metals and gems are the conductors of magic, which is why they're so valuable. Instead of just being very pretty, they're also very, very useful in terms of the way that they conduct magic. I stumbled into this amethyst theme in this way, which I later incorporated into his color scheme. For a nice subtle contrast, his eyes are a green-brown. I really like the geode one that I ended up designing, so I kept that for my later designs. This idea has been frying in my head for a while, if you can tell. Despite this, I proceeded to have the worstest time ever. This is actually one of the most challenging designs I've done in a while, specifically because of two things. The first is the cape blazer, or the cloak jacket. You see, I wanted the classiness of the Victorian jacket with the wizardness of a cape or a cloak. So I decided a cape blazer would really help balance the two out. But of course, trying to balance the Victorian inspiration with the aesthetic of the classy, pointy-headed, loosely dressed star-covered wizard is very difficult because I have to decide what sort of structure and silhouette this cape should have. Specifically, the inside of the cape. So should it be form-fitting or should it be looser? I also had a very hard time making him look handsome, which did not work. My full body sketches that attempted to capture his personality also didn't go very well because he just looks too frazzled, although I do think that it's a good try and I should probably do more full body sketches next time. I did a lot of doodles to figure out the cape structure and color distribution and how to make it look good when he's running around and casting spells. I settled on a loose-fitting cape blazer with a purple underside and a lilac vest with a white inside. He's very gradient-like in this way. I think that this loose-fitting silhouette adds an aura of intrigue and increases the classic wizard vibes. Plus, when the underside is a bright color, it makes the design pop more. And it also gives him a nice magician vibe as well. Besides, maybe this cape cloak was thrifted or stolen, that's why it's a bit loose. This time, I tried to make my time-lapse and final character sheet more interesting with a non-gray background and a bit of texture. I also made sure to have a more interesting layout with props and a portrait and a half body. This should help illustrate his character a bit better, although that part is tricky. Because scammers, at least convincing ones, usually don't look like scammers. He doesn't look awfully suspicious, so I guess job well done to both of us. This oval-shaped portrait of him is supposed to give off those Victorian vibes, and this little half body of him casting a spell is supposed to give him a more dimension and to showcase details I didn't include in the rest of the design. It is here I realize some things about my art. I enjoy giving my characters unique faces, Unlike some artists, I don't really have a default face I use constantly. However, what happens is that I end up struggling to design characters that are attractive, or are supposed to be. Couple that with my lack of experience drawing Caucasians, and I ended up struggling to render this bastard sharp nose for what felt like centuries. It was kind of funny how embarrassing that was. Anyways, lesson learned, I need to use my references. After doing additional research, I learned that apparently a walking stick is a must for a Victorian gentleman, so I decided that his stick should also be his one staff thing that he brings around everywhere. Another prop aside from the essential wizarding wand is a suitcase. I designed it on a whim. It's everything you'd need if you needed to move house constantly to escape from angry customers and the authorities. I pictured it as being some sort of stolen heirloom from a rich school friend's family. You know, one that he snatched away at a rather rowdy party one night in magic school, before getting expelled for cheating later that year. Everything you store in this special suitcase is shrunken here, but you still have limited capacity, and it's also rather heavy. It's got a little closet section, 2 cupboards for all of your house things, and of course, a little bookcase section for all the books that he's never returned to all the libraries. He's the sort who reads up on a variety of topics, a little more in depth than others do, and that's how he tricks people into thinking he's an expert. He's a trivia enthusiast, and he has a great memory. And another troubling realization as I rested for the day, I realized I forgot something really special. Wizards must be eccentric and fashionable. So alongside the amethyst geode theme, let's try a celestial theme with stars to match, with the moon walking staff. Because the wand has this cup and it sort of looks like a moon from this angle. Plus, the stars call back to the classical wizard images with the star-covered gown. I really want him to have embroidered all of these stars himself. I think that in this world, your love and experience makes your handmade crafts have some sort of effect, so these sparkles would shrink and expand to mimic a star glow's real shine. His customers just assume he's rich enough to have commissioned these from a skilled embroiderer, but really it's his own deft hand. I think it also adds a nice touch. I also tried to make his cape blazer more fantastical by adding a slight color shift, although I probably could have gone more wild with that. Here's him with his cape coat and witch hat, which I assume is going to be like a formal thing that he wears outside. I also wanted it to be a perfect cone at first, but then I gave it a bit of a crooked tip. It could be a subtle sign as to his improper wizardry. Maybe the rest of the wizards have perfect cones, the same way that Victorian men's top hats have perfect rectangles, or are just at least very straight. Anyways, the next day after I finished the design sheet, I looked back at his portrait and was like, hot damn, I really need to make him easier to look at. So I redid his portrait. He looked a bit young, so I had to give him plastic surgery with a liquify tool to make him look older. This time, I glanced at the picture of Timothée Chalamet acting in Doom, in intervals, as some sort of good luck charm to make my wizard less ugly. I suppose it worked. Yay! And now we have the final design here. It's time for my self-critique. After so much work on this character, it's time for me to beat him up so that I can improve my future designs. Overall, looking at this layout, I think that it's quite interesting with the props and the half body and the portrait and whatnot. I especially like the props. I think that they're quite well designed, even though I might have a little bit of practice to do drawing suitcases. But one thing that I really don't like is the fact that I have no idea how to put patterns on the characters convincingly. I really should have tried harder on this one. This was not good, man. It could work as a stylistic choice, but it just doesn't with the rest of the art, which is very rendered and painterly. So I'm gonna thumbs down that. As for the wand, I think that the pointed tip at the bottom is a bit impractical, so maybe I would make it blunt, but I would make the bottom something that you could unscrew so that you could take out a matching pen from it. I just think that he'd be the sort to have that sort of thing. Overall, I don't have much qualms with this design. I would just have a minor few things that I would change. But my main gripe with this design is that it lacks personality. One of my main aspects of my art that I want to improve is making my characters more alive and human. A doodle can be better at showcasing a design compared to a painting you spend way more time on. For example, while the doodles I did earlier did not match the personality I wanted for this character, they did feel more alive and convey more characteristics that are more interesting and unique. It's all about the expression and the way the characters emote and act and what they're doing. And of course, adding dialogue would also be a great idea too. So, if I were to remake this sheet or draw this character again, I would make him do something more characterizing, such as performing a fake magic act or counting money or hurriedly packing his suitcase before the authorities show up on his doorstep. Overall, I think that this design was a great learning experience, and I'm sure that my next few designs will turn out way better than this one. I think that I'd like to design more characters in this Victorian fantasy setting I've created. Let's see what I do next. Maybe I should try a witch next time. I was thinking that witches and wizards aren't actually related to gender, but are rather separated by wizards being in the magical equivalent of STEM and witches being in the magical equivalent of humanities. So how would that even work? I don't know. Well, we'll see about that. Please give me name suggestions if you're so inclined. I'm the sort who takes like 2,000 years to come up with a good name. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and have a good day now. Bye!